Hey up you lot. Apologies for my absence last week. Just family stuff that demanded my attention pretty much all day, and I just didn't get a chance to do a video. But I'm doing it this week. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to see the Sparks Brothers film, which was absolutely brilliant, as I figured it would be. Um, I think you kind of don't even have to like Sparks to enjoy it. It's just like two guys struggling against a tide of, I don't know, they're just kind of doing what they want to do, and not everybody wants to buy into that. And also, if you like Sparks, then it's great because the male brothers are amazing. Anyway, it kind of got me thinking about bands that either never made it or kept slogging at it and still didn't quite get the recognition I think that they deserve. I know Sparks invested their money wisely, and when they did have pretty sizable hits, they did use that money so they could keep putting out records, and whether they charted or not, it didn't matter because they had enough just to keep ticking by, and they did what they loved. But not every band's been quite as lucky as that. And yeah, I was thinking about some bands that I really love that fell by the wayside for one reason or another. And I thought I picked 5. So let's kick off. We'll not keep hanging on too long. So the first one, and it's a band I absolutely adore, and I am still disappointed that they called it a day, and it's the Tall Boys. So this is their 1984 release, Wednesday Addams' Boyfriend, which is fab. So the Tall Boys were formed by Nigel Lewis, who with Paul Fenech. I'm never sure how to pronounce his name. He formed Meteors with Paul Fenech. Apologies if I get it wrong. And then obviously moved on from the Meteors, was in the formed the Escalators, and then eventually formed the Tall Boys, which was, I think, swept up partly in the whole psychobilly movement in the 80s, but it kept that kind of rock and roll horror edge to it, very dark, but also embraced an awful lot from like psych garage type stuff. This is their first longer length release. It's only a 6-track EP, but it's kind of joyous garagey punk rock and roll noise, but then a couple of tracks have got keyboards provided by James Taylor from the Prisoners, and then obviously James Taylor Quartet. And I've started with the Tall Boys because I think Nigel Lewis sums it up really, really succinctly. There's an interview with him on oldschoolpsychobilly.de, and the chap interviewing him asks kind of why and when the Tall Boys broke up, what was going on. And Nigel Lewis says it was about 1987, and due to a lack of success. We were all getting to an age when you have to make regular money. That's not an idea I like, but you can't eat drums. Sometimes bands just, I don't know, in the wrong place at the wrong time, and no matter how good they are, or how good you personally think they are, there's so many great bands that are performers that just kind of fall a little bit by the wayside. If I'm not saying that these bands or performers are like moribund and finished. I mean, a lot of them just keep going. If music's in your blood, music's in your blood. So Nigel Lewis still gigs, I think, occasionally as Nigel Lewis and the Zorch Men, doing like a rockabilly, garagey type thing. and do check them out. And if you're a fan of any of the bands or performers that I'm going to talk about in this video, and you think, no, they're still going, that's rubbish. It's just, I'm not suggesting they totally flopped, because the Tall Boys still have fans, Nigel Lewis still has fans, all the bands that I'm going to talk about still have fans. It's just that for some reason they didn't get that success that some of their peers did. Now, I know music is a really personal thing, and there's always, like, if you guys are obviously into music because you're watching music videos on YouTube, videos about music, and if you have a passion for music, I think you do tend to look for stuff that isn't always necessarily the mainstream. And that can lead you down some really interesting rabbit holes. Let's have a look at the next one. So another one from 1984. It wasn't a good year for bands to manage to keep going. And this is The Jesus Egg That Wept by Danielle Dax. And I really love Danielle Dax. So she was originally in the Lemon Kittens and left, that they kind of broke up. She did some stuff with Robert Fripp with League of Gentlemen, and she did really, really well, like in the 80s indie chart. She's like a... I don't necessarily like the comparison, but I can't think of another comparison. She's like a dark and slightly sinister Kate Bush. She's an amazing multi-instrumentalist and played most of the instruments, wrote everything, like played most of the instruments. And her themes are quite dark, and sometimes her... sometimes like the first track on this uses racially insensitive language, but it is about kind of racist Bible thumpers. So in the context of the song, it has quite an impact. So it's not like approachable, fun pop. So you might say that's why she maybe didn't quite get the chart success, but she did really well in the indie charts. And then in 1990, her last album, Blast the Human Flower, every album she released, that's her second album, she kind of drifted a little bit more and more towards a commercial sound, away from the kind of odd and experimental, but still quite poppy. Pariah on this one is an absolute belter of a song, kind of weird, dark electro, but it's like nothing else on the album. It's a right weird mishmash of brilliant stuff, and she was a hell of a performer. I think she probably still is. But yeah, with her last album in 1990, I just... That commercialism that she brought in, which you can totally understand somebody doing. I'm all for people utilising and displaying this like experimental idea for music, but that's not gonna pay your bills, and that's not gonna put food on the table. It's not gonna mean commercial success. And if you're doing something, I guess, like being a musician, your ultimate goal is to make money at it. She's since she did some acting. She was in I think was it Company of Wolves. She was in that. She's done some. She's been on some of these BBC TV home decorating mid-afternoon shows. Bless her. But yeah, just kind of maybe got disillusioned with people not buying into the music that she wanted to produce. On the flip side of that, still from 1984, 1984 must have been a hell of a year, is The Jazz Butcher. So I kind of discovered the Jazz Butcher. I'm sure it's like a Bauhaus compilation I've got, like a double LP, and it's kind of got the Bauhaus family tree in the middle, in the gatefold, and David J from Bauhaus was in the Jazz Butcher for a while, and that's what kind of made me think, oh, I'll check them out. Jazz Butcher are brilliant, wonderful Hunt Emerson album cover. That's just genius. I love Hunt Emerson. They're jaunty and fun, a bit like Divine Comedy, but their lyrics they're humorous, but in a really dark way, in a really odd way, or about real things. It's almost like, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, because when it's done right, it's brilliant. Almost like observational comedy, but very, very black comedy. There's no actual things that make you laugh, but the lyrical content amuses you in a way that you can identify with a lot of the time. And it's, like I said, the music is jaunty, it bounces along. A lot of their songs are quite like, oh, this is fun. But when you actually listen to the words, it's like properly flipped. So this is their second album. And they were essentially formed by Pat Fish and Max Ida. And Pat Fish is the chap that's kind of just kept going with the band. I think they're actually still going, constantly releasing stuff. Although I think their last album was 2012. But tremendous fun, approachable and listenable, kind of jaunty guitar-based pop with lovely kind of clever lyrics, but just kind of forgotten now a little bit. Right, we're on to one of the heavy hitters now, and this is a really odd choice because, well, you'll get why. It's Ultravox. So this is their second album, Ha Ha Ha. Now, for those of you that are a bit like, what, Vienna and all that, there's kind of two Ultravoxes. So there was the whole, before Vienna, there was the whole different Ultravox. Early Ultravox kind of imploded after 3 albums, and it's obvious why. They just didn't sell enough albums. They didn't have that smash, and they were eventually dropped in, was it 1978? Year after this came out, in 77. They were dropped by Island Records, who then released a kind of unimaginative compilation of some of their best stuff that they tried to push. And you can see why members of Ultravox were just like, do you know what? We've done 3 albums and we're not breaking. But looking back, 1977's Ha 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 is just like, it's a mashup of like early Roxy music, a little bit of Kraftwerk, New York Dolls, maybe even a little bit of T-Rex, but lots and lots of punk, all mashed together, kind of out, Tubeway in, Tubeway Army, just doing amazing music that, for whatever reason, just didn't gel with the public. So after like 3 albums, John Fox, the kind of singer and songwriter, I mean they all wrote, but John Fox put a lot of influence into it. He went solo. Robin Simon went off and joined Magazine. Billy Currie did a little stint with Tubeway Army, and then ended up in Visage, where he met Midge Ure, and eventually they got together, and there was the new Ultravox, and they released Vienna, and it blew up and they had massive chart success, which it is about making money. Like I said, you want to make a living at this, I guess. And the kind of post John Fox Ultravox, it's not necessarily my cup of tea, I must admit. But the early Ultravox, it's strange and experimental and bleak, and somehow they got away with, like, on Rock, filthy lyrics full of effing and jeffing. It still got played on the BBC. They managed to get away with it somehow. I think that's genius. Well worth checking out if you're into any kind of new wavy or that like retro electro type stuff, that like retro future stuff, like Kraftwerk and Tube Army and all that kind of stuff. Just absolutely brilliant. And everybody, including my lad, my lad's 19 and he digs through all my record collection and digs out the Damned and the Clash and the Pistols. And when I played him that, he was like, Dad, this is genius. It is one of my most perfect albums, I think. So sticking with 1977, the last one on my little list of bands that never seem to get anywhere. I know Ultravox did eventually get somewhere and they got huge, but it was like, it wasn't a lot of the original members or kind of what they set out to do. Another band I absolutely adore that kind of dropped off the radar completely is Gloria Mundy. So this is kind of similar to early Ultravox. Maybe a little bit more political, maybe a little bit more aggressive. So it was Eddie Mayalov and Sunshine Patterson. Mayalov played sax for a little bit for early Ultravox, so they kind of got along quite well. They were pals, and there's obviously like cross influences there, except with Gloria Mundy, I think they were starting to lean a bit more towards a, I don't want to say goth and put people off. I love 80s goth, but it's almost like proto-goth. Makes you wonder if the guys from Bauhaus, I know Bauhaus don't identify as a goth band, neither do the Sisters, but goths love them. I did in the 80s. Yeah, it's almost like proto-goth. I wonder if guys from Bauhaus listened to and dug this album. So they only released 2 albums before they called it a day after what appears to be very little success. I was very young in 1977, too young to check out the music press to see what was happening with Gloria Mundy, so it's a little dig around on the internet to see if they had any success, and it doesn't really look like they did. But again, if you're into that, like, that style of music that was almost like synth electro and punk and the sensibilities of, early Roxy Music type stuff, then they're well worth listening to. And it's all on YouTube. Mayalov and Patterson did carry on after the 2 Gloria Mundy albums. They formed a kind of electro cabaret duo called Eddie and Sunshine, which are also very cool. But for me personally, doesn't quite have that aggressive and accusatory edge that Gloria Mundy has. So that's 5 bands that I was thinking, Sparks just kept slogging away at it. And some fell by the wayside, some kept going. So that's 5 of my absolute favourites that I kind of wish they'd continued and done more. Let's see if Victor's awake yet. There we go. Well, thank you for watching, guys. And if you're interested in sleazy, vintage, ridiculous horror paperbacks, I will see you lovely lot on Wednesday. And if you're just here for the vinyl, it'll be next Sunday, right back here for more vinyl chat. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all soon.